Hello, everyone. We're joined here with Captain Troy Handsome and Sugarcoated Moth once again to talk about TTRPGs again, part two. But
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank y'all for coming. I'm really appreciate you coming back here talking about it again because when we ended last time, we were like, huh, we forgot to mention some things like last time. I think the first thing you mentioned was dice, and I was just like, "Oops."
Yeah. I was like, wait, there was so much more to talk about. It was a really fun time last time.
Yeah, I agree.
um, so that made me think. Hi sushi, hi Max. That made me think. Wow. With dice, there's a lot of things you do with it. You get initiative. You make sure if any checks are passed or failed. But the other thing I thought of was it's sort of how you make your characters, or at least it was back in the days. What do y'all is that sort of still the thing how it works now?
Uh, you want me to go first, or
Yeah, I'll go after you. That's okay. Thank you.
so for character creation, I typically use the Call of Cthulhu set, and that if you don't really know what you're doing when making a character, it gives you like sets of traits for like each bit of backstory or personality that you can roll, or just pick from like 1 to 10, I believe, and it's like what people are really important to this person, and then it's like number one is like a close friend, number two is like a significant other or like person of authority in their life, that sort of thing.
Oh,
um and you still get to like flesh that out, but it gives you like the bare essentials of what their deal is. um I find personally really helpful. It's probably not exactly what you were asking, but like the sort of point systems for like stats and things a little bit different from D&D, and they're kind of hard to explain if you're not like looking at the book itself. Is everything on there is in percentile and not like out of 20. It's like it'll be you have a perception of like 45. That means that you have to roll, um, I believe, above a 45 to pass that check. So
oh,
it's a bit more mathy to get there. Um,
yeah, that's really cool.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it might have not been exactly what I was. Well, it kind of was actually, but that's definitely interesting to hear. Just hearing how it affects your character and the relationships is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Was that sort of how you did it too, Troy, or was there something else you had?
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to jump in on this now. It does remind me that typically in at least Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, there are a few different ways that people can get their stats. They can use what we call standard array, which is like a set of numbers that you can use like as a default. Like it's okay if you get like you're at least mediocrely well at this and not very good at this. There's another system called point buy that's very popular. It essentially involves you have like skill points. You know, like when you start an MMO, you can allocate your skill points or some other RPG into skills that you want. So there's that system. But since we're talking about dice, the most fun way to do it, especially if you're just doing a one shot, where if you roll really poorly, it might not matter, or if you roll really well, it'll make for great memories. Is just it's just rolling for your stats. There's like two common ways where you take like a bunch of the d6s. You take like four, and you roll them, and you drop the lowest die, or you just take three d6s and roll them. So a little bit of mathy, but it feels good for especially a new player when they roll like really well. And if we're doing a one shot, they won't overpower maybe the rest of the party. Because when it comes to longer form campaigns, I actually kind of push more towards, hey, can you do the skill point allocation, the point buy system? If it's just a one shot, then like roll away. If you roll poorly, it makes for a great story. And hey, it's just a one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I add to what I said before,
Hmm.
real quick? So, for like actual skill points, there's a lot more in Call of Cthulhu, and that can be affected. Like, it's usually affected both by your occupation or your age of the character. Um, like your age can affect your level of education or luck or that sort of
Oh.
thing. And your occupation can determine like what predetermined skills you have that you can be like more proficient or less proficient in. And you get a set amount that can be like your personal bit. You can't really have everything. And that's sort of why I was a little bit weird there. Is you kind of have to build the character and the backstory before you can really decide what they're good at or bad at.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense too.
It actually reminds me of something. If I have a chance to hop in here,
Hmm.
is because in D&D they only focus on giving you abilities, whereas in games like Shadowrun or Vampire the Masquerade, you can take flaws in addition to your what you're good at, to give you more points to allocate towards other skills. So in Vampire the Masquerade, I took two flaws. The classic vampire, I can't cross running water, and there's like some other like sensitivity to the light. And because I took those flaws, I had more points to allocate towards other skills I wanted, like the ability to hold down real life food for longer as a vampire, since we can't have real food, and some other things. So that's kind of
Oh.
what I miss playing D&D, is like having those flaws that I want to add to my character. It makes for great story beats, and it gives me other boons that I might want.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like it gives you a more fleshed out character if you can't necessarily have everything. Like, you know, if you're a student in Call
Right.
of Cthulhu and you're fairly like, young, your luck is gonna be increased, but like your physical strength won't be as good, but you might have a higher intelligence than an older character that is not a student. Um, Also, like something that I like about Call of Cthulhu a bit more than D&D. This is a bit of a tangent, but
Sure, sure.
intelligence and wisdom feel like they mean different things for the characters. Like, I know in D&D they're used for different things. Like for me in that sort of setting, it's kind of hard for me to figure out what that means for the character's personality. Um, in Call of Cthulhu, intelligence is like just book smarts. You know a bunch of things, and wisdom is how you understand that.
Oh.
So you have it's not wisdom, it's education. So education is stuff that you know, things that you learned like at school or something, or like through experience. Then intelligence is a really big trade-off if you have a higher intelligence, because sure you can like know more things, you can identify more stuff, but if you understand more, that's dangerous for you in an eldritch situation. Your sanity is going to go down way faster.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's one of the times where having a higher number is actually kind of detrimental in the situation.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, it's kind of a trade-off because yeah, you know more, but like more things are gonna make your brain go kaput.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting to me the way you could sort of weave a character in terms of both the stats and the personality through dice. So this will be a sort of same question, but sort of different question for the both of you. So, Mav, last time you talked about making characters for your one shots, and then the players choosing and being able to play with them. So,
yeah.
how do you decide and go about making the characters for the campaign? Is it sort of you think of the characters, or you think of characters that would fit well with the premise you think of?
Um, Typically think of characters that I think would fit well with the premise that I've made. They kind of start out as just like just shells, bodies to fill a quota. Um, and then you can use the dice system for Call of Cthulhu is what I typically use to kind of flesh them out a bit more and give them like a proper backstory and like ties to the story. Because, I can't necessarily do all of that in like 2 weeks on my own.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really useful. And, if you haven't, I highly recommend trying that out, even if it's like not necessarily for Call of Cthulhu. Your character building system is very good, in my opinion. Um, yeah, I just lost my train of thought. 1 second.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Um, Character building, backstory.
If you want me to let you pick
I'm
a little bit, I could
sorry.
ask. Oh, were you okay?
Can you come back to me?
Okay. All right. So, Troy,
For
it's a
sure.
similar question.
Hi.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, no, I was just saying hi as an active listener. I'm sorry. Please proceed.
It's okay. All right. Let's see. What was I gonna say? Uh-oh. No, I forgot. Okay. Okay, it's a similar question for you. Whenever you're coming up with characters for, say you're joining a campaign, or
Ah.
two-parter for you. How do you decide what kind of character you want when it comes to a campaign? Do you already have a character? Do you make it for specifically for a character? And similarly, when someone joins your campaign with a character, does it sort of help evolve the scenario in your head about what can happen in your campaign?
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah, let me go ahead and address this first question. So normally when someone says, "Hey Troy, I've got a campaign for you. Would you like to be part of it?" Which happens occasionally. I'll have an idea. Well, they'll tell me about the setting, right? For example, my friend said he's going to run a campaign soon that's inspired by Studio Ghibli and Legend of Zelda, like those vibes.
Ooh.
Or when he says like, "Oh, I have a desert campaign," I usually have. Sometimes I'll have a character in mind, and I'm like, "Ooh, okay, perhaps I will bring my Sun Soul monk to that campaign." They're like queued up and ready to go. They're in the wings. Or perhaps I'll have one mulling around in my head that, yeah, I'll make this for that campaign. But hopefully, especially if I'm doing it, kind of like to spoil answers for my second question, I like to have a session zero, which is important because a little bit of a tangent. You have to make sure everyone's on the same page to make sure that, if you're all going to be making humorous characters, that you're all, yeah, yeah, we'll make the funny characters, or if you're all going to take the campaign seriously, to set aside those rules, the rules of consent that we talked about last time, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. What are you looking for in a campaign? How often can we meet? And that lets me know, hey, that Sun Soul monk I was going to bring, she's good to go. She can come along. Or maybe, hey, that Era Kakara that I was going to make and bring along, he's like a monk also, like a wrestler. I don't think I should bring him along. He's not really right for the theme. Kind of like when D&D is high fantasy and then Call of Cthulhu has those elements that Moth is really good at, kind of like instilling that that fear or dread, if I'm understanding Call of Cthulhu correctly, just to make sure that
Yeah.
if I were to run that kind of campaign, that if what the character is looking for, if they want to bring their wrestler in, if that's the vibe everyone's going for, fine. But more often than not, they're going to bring something that's kind of like correct, that fits the setting. That is something like maybe if we were doing something that was Soulsborne, like, in nature, that you bring something that fits that gothic horror vibe that could fit in, I don't know, like the sewery setting or Dishonored or something along those lines. So I'll know at that first session before anything else happens, like, yeah, I can bring that character. So I'll have it waiting in the wings, and if she doesn't fit, then I'll make a different character, maybe.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's sort of knowing the vibe and trying to fit it.
The vibe,
Yeah.
reading the room. that leads me to I wanted to mention this earlier when you mentioned the dice, but sometimes I'll actually, when I get a new set of dice, I'll try to maybe make a character that's based on the dice, or I'll get a set of dice based on a character I already have. I have a stars druid, so every time I see like dice that looks like a constellation, like the night sky, a galaxy with little stars in it, like purples and blues, I'm like, that reminds me of Adastria, so I got to get that set to play when I play her,
Oh
and
my
vice
gosh.
versa.
Sounds wonderful.
Sounds really cool. And I love
Hmm.
collecting dice like that.
Oh,
But, like,
absolutely.
I need to curb the dice budget.
Yeah, I was just about to say it might be a little financially hard on the wallet, but can't resist the shiny clicky clackies.
Yeah,
Moth, were you able to sort of think about the thing you were trying to remember?
I did not get it back. I'm sorry.
That's
Um,
okay.
like, getting on to how Captain here likes to like make characters that like fit in with the setting. That's part of why I pre-make my characters, because you know I I feel like I have more creative control, which is not necessarily what everyone wants in a DM. But like I know that they're not going to necessarily like mess with the setting. Um, but I feel like I don't necessarily make like boring characters. Like to do stuff like I believe Return of the Living Dead.
Hmm.
I'm just checking that that's the movie that I know I was thinking. Yeah, Return of the Living Dead, where it's like a bunch of punks facing off against a bunch of zombies. Like that's fun. That's goofy. Um, Sometimes you don't necessarily want to be fun and goofy, but like if I have the opportunity to throw a scene kid into an Eldritch horror situation, I'm gonna do it.
That sounds great, actually. It
Yeah.
reminds me of I don't listen to a lot of D&D podcasts, but there was one called it's family oriented. It's called Dungeons and Daddies, and it's about these four suburban father figures in a minivan who get sent to a post-apocalyptic world where they have to find their children. And like imagine middle-aged dad with his like secret supply of candy hidden away in the glove compartment of his car, and they all find themselves in a world where there are I don't remember if there are zombies involved, but you mentioning Scene Kid in a zombie apocalypse reminded me. Imagine four middle-aged parents in a minivan just cruising around in apocalypse also.
Yeah. If you like that sort of thing, I would highly recommend Return of the Living Dead. It's a very fun horror movie.
I'll definitely check
Nice.
it out.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
in the chat, Stuck'em01 asks, how often do y'all make characters?
Um,
uh, would you like you...
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Only because I keep offering to hang back. All right. I feel like I make characters pretty often. It's gotten to the point where I have more. I feel like this happens to a lot of players. They have more characters than they have campaigns to be in because I'll see maybe a set of dice, or maybe I'll see a movie or play a video game that, wait, I want to make a character from like the Ruby universe, or I've been playing, or like not me playing, but if like someone playing Cyberpunk 2077 would be like, oh, I want to make a character like similar from this universe and inject it into like my Shadowrun game or another TTRPG. So I get inspired by the media I watch a lot. Also, when I see the cool dice, like I mentioned before, or if I see a new subclass that either D&D introduces, or I'll see fan content that people will make, or other famous DMs or players will say, "Yeah, I've made this new subclass," and I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds really cool. I want to give that ninja subclass a try." Right? So then I'll make a character based on that. So yeah, I have a lot of characters. So if if anyone's looking for a player, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
My answer for that is fairly different because I pre-make my characters and I don't typically like play as a player. It used to be that I'd have to make like 5 every 2 weeks. I don't do that anymore. That's not sustainable. Um, I did get a lot from that. That like with new people, I can just kind of recycle. Um, because I don't really play D&D that much, I don't necessarily have a bunch of characters stored up. I could probably do that, but like I don't really have a reason to. I do really like making OCs though. My favorite bit is like just designing what they look like and everything. Because like Lux, I really like character design and I really like medieval sort of looking character design. Specifically sort of like Edwardian style dress, I think is really fascinating to like learn about and try to replicate in designs.
Oh, that sounds really lovely. Yeah, that
Yeah,
actually
character design is great.
that actually would lead to my next question. But before that, no, what was I gonna say?
Do you mind if I jump in for a bit?
Oh
I just
yeah,
want
go
to
ahead.
also gush about. I also like. I guess I don't have as much experience with designing characters. But I definitely enjoy it, especially the outfit aspect for my characters. What helped was one time I had an OC and one of my players. I was like looking through like a fashion Tumblr that I follow, but my player was able to come up with attire that they believed would be correct for the period, the age that we were in. So I was able to incorporate that into a commission I eventually got of the character. And I feel really good about it. It was like the late 1600s, early 1700s, I believe, or something along those lines. So it really helps since that's not necessarily my strong suit to turn to other people or character designers to help me bring my character to life because I just love outfits for them. And actually, instead of just creating characters, sometimes I'll go through a period where I'm like, this character has had this outfit for too long. It's time to give her a new one, especially if it's
Mm.
seasonal, like for all the holidays. It's exciting stuff.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
so nice.
my favorite character design that I've ever made is just doesn't even really look like a person. Let me send you the example. He's my boy. Um, I knitted a plush of him at one point.
Aw.
He's my guy. Not in any of the Call of Cthulhu things that I've ever run, but just I, I like making characters with more like unique sort of silhouettes. I
Oh, that's
like
really good.
more older sorts of fashion, but I take a lot of inspiration also from like early 2000s sort of thing.
I think I
Um,
could show the chat if you get your permission.
oh yeah, go ahead. Um, I just I really like doing sort of character designs. The other day I actually made a something that I really like doing sometimes just to challenge myself is to like take a funky looking bug or something and try to like turn it into a character design or an outfit or something. Um, if you want another example of that, I can show you if
Okay.
you want.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is
Um,
what Merce was talking about. This is their That's
boy.
so good.
Yeah, I love so much about it, like the eyebrow situation, the piercing, the eyes, the neck situation, the coloring, the shading, the sheen on the hair. I love it all.
I know. Um, this one was based off of a polyphemus moth. Um, which just vibey. I do you like 1 second?
They're complimenting you in the chat. They look
Oh, thank
amazing and
you.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
but like,
that's so cool. I love the inspiration, how it turned out.
Holy
thank
crap.
you. I really like just making outfits and stuff. I think it's fun. The
Nice.
whole reason that I started doing art in the first place was to like just make funky little characters. Um, I keep doing that. Sometimes they don't even get named. Um, it's just a fun little thing.
That's amazing. I'm just here thinking, why do I keep making human characters when I could be making a cool
No, no,
one?
no. That's okay. You're valid too. Most D&D players do branch out when it comes to the lineages of their characters, but I feel you because most of mine have been human. But in my defense, it's because at least in Dungeons and Dragons, when it comes to the humans, they get like they get an extra feat and ability, and I love actually creating characters based around those feats. Uh, because I like extra skills. Extra numbers are fine and all, but I like cool things they can do, whether it's like teleport or they're psychic or things along those lines. And I branch out here and there, but people in this community like to joke, "Oh, everyone's playing a human fighter," but there's actually a lot of diversity within that subclass. So at least for now, hey, if you got the humans, that's cool too.
Thank you. That makes
Yeah,
me feel.
and I mostly make human characters as well. Because in Call of Cthulhu, most of the player characters gonna be human. It doesn't necessarily have any like effect if they are or aren't, because it's kind of assumed that they are, because it's not necessarily explicitly a fantasy world. Um, I only sometimes make drawings for them though.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's just a lot of them. Um, that's where just going on Picrew or something helps.
Yes,
Oh, yes.
Picrew. Very
Picrew
useful
is
for D&D.
fantastic. Yeah. You're trying to do a lot of character designs at once. Highly recommend just doing a Picrew or something. Because even if you're gonna like Twitch it, or not Twitch it, tweak it. My brain isn't working today. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Same
All
here.
good, all good.
Yeah. Um, you're gonna tweak it, like that's fine. If you're not gonna tweak it, that's also fine. Because if you draw it later, that's still your design. You know?
Hmm. Yeah, it's nice. Like, it's good to give that little push to help things along as a tool, basically. Yeah, I gotta
Yeah.
hop on Pickery more.
Yeah. My bookmarks are just entirely destroyed, both by just random recipes that I'm like, oh, I should try that, and then also just a bunch of pickers.
That's cool. Speaking of visual design, I guess since we got to see a bunch of moths, was there anything you particularly want to show, Troy?
Sure, I'll show something. As I'm pulling up, so I'm gonna show you. If you don't have to show this other picture if you don't want. Let me just check something.
Oh, I
So
do
there's
want.
actually okay, cool. So there's this music group that I follow, and I actually was inspired. Yeah, inspired. Well, the outfit is very similar. It's pretty much exact, but let me get the right picture here. So I used this as a reference and then asked my commissionee to basically put my character in this outfit. So I'm gonna go to post them both. Feel free to share whatever or neither that you would like. Because I needed a new outfit for her. Because her previous one was very derivative, and I wanted to. That was a nice base. It was good to have her in that for that year or two, but I wanted to go away from that, and so I asked the commissioners, like, "Hey, can you do this, but with a few changes, like making, like, there's a button that I wanted to have look more like a cinnamon bun situation up where her neck is. She fights with umbrellas, which is why she's holding that umbrella." And the eyes are like that because there was a period of time where she was evil. You know how it be. So
Oh, yeah.
It looks
actually,
amazing.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I wasn't expecting to be showing her off here. So as she is my first D&D character,
Really?
she's pretty
First.
special to me. Yeah, I was gonna bring this up earlier when we mentioned the recycling of characters. I actually do that because I like to keep them at the same level they were, as if they've been going on this journey between the different campaigns. So I might have been playing her in this campaign with a group that we no longer meet. But when someone's like, "Hey, I need, we're gonna start at this level, like level 3 or 5," I'm like, "Oh, hey, maybe my character has just sailed across the ocean to join you for this new campaign after she's been done with her job at the last place, or she's decided to leave. Like I like to keep that story, that lore, that continuity going, as if to say, yeah, yeah, a few years back I was traveling with this other group in one campaign, quote unquote, but then now I'm here with you all. So it's nice to keep that going. I like to see where their
Oh,
journey
that's
takes them.
cool. That's actually, I think that might be the first I've personally heard of someone who like continues from campaign to campaign.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like issue with that sort of thing is I don't necessarily like starting off players at different levels. Um, because I feel like that can kind of mess with like the group dynamic. Um, like I don't want players to think that I'm like favoring someone else by letting them start with like a higher level character than the rest of them. You know?
Yeah, I feel that. I feel both are really valid.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I feel like,
Um,
yeah, yeah, very valid.
like keeping a character over there and just make sure that you're communicating with your DM and like what's going on if they need you to like bring the level down a bit or that sort of thing.
that's freaking
Right.
amazing. I feel really special being able to see your characters.
Well,
Oh
thank you
man,
for.
if you want,
Oh my
I
gosh.
can just talk about them for hours.
Yeah, thank you for indulging us. Like,
Yeah.
characters are such an important part of our being because not only do they inherit some of our characteristics, and not only do we play as them as our self inserts, like they're basically a part of us, and they're very important to us. So, you allowing us to share them like this is, I know it means a lot for me.
Yeah, it means a lot for me too, especially my boy. Love my boy.
Yeah, and everyone loves them in the chat too. I can't wait till like I want to show everyone your characters. They're both so amazing, and those are just a few. I'm sure y'all have many you're proud of.
Yeah, later I'll probably show you because I want to show you the references the clothing references I asked the artist to use, but I'll at least show you the character. Basically, this was the one where I asked. I was like basically looking for the right era of clothing. Um, so then I asked the commissioner to make this, and he's
Oh,
got
that's so cute.
moles because moles are cute. And then yeah, her thank you, I appreciate it. Basically, her shawl is from one outfit, and then her sleeves are specifically from another outfit. It was also a different color, but then I purple is important to this character for a certain reason, so I asked the commissioner to just make more things purple. I'll have to find the references sometime, but actually I'll just do it in a bit.
Okay, I'll have that up shortly.
Yeah, I
Yes.
would send you some like Call of Cthulhu drawings that I did, but I don't know if we ever want to like explore a campaign or something with that, and I don't necessarily want to accidentally give spoilers. Um,
Oh, true.
yeah,
Okay.
that's why I just did like a throwaway design, and then also a character that has never been used in any campaign ever.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess since I am interested in that, perhaps I'll hold off just for spoilers' sake, but I look forward to experiencing that down the line.
Yeah,
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think not only me, I'm sure everyone's interested in joining campaigns for at least very least playing with the both of you because ooh, y'all are your minds are so amazing.
thank
Thank
you.
you. I
Um,
appreciate that.
Sorry, I was trying to talk and drink at the same time, even though I should have.
Oh, no, hydration's important.
hydration is
Hydration,
very important.
hydration nation.
I'm gonna take a drink of water right now.
Yeah, I will too, in solidarity, and also because it's important. It's been really humid here,
Uh,
so I really should drink.
um.
yeah, big storm just like rolled through yesterday.
Oh
Actually
no!
knocked over a tree.
Holy
Um,
shit!
it's fine.
Roll
Everyone's
the
fine.
nat
We
20
cut
to
down some
destruction.
branches. Don't worry. Um, but Yeah, at least it's not humid anymore.
Yes, it's much better now. It's very nice.
I have a question then. Would your early characters get along with your later characters?
Ooh.
Like one of your earliest, would they get along with one of your latest characters? And whoever would like to go first.
I'll hop in for this one. So the character I just showed you, her name's Dulce de la Leche. She goes by Dolce, the one with the umbrella. So because she comes from common birth, she's worked like as a city guard for some time. She's owned a tavern for a little, co-owned a tavern for a little while. Because she's not from nobility, I do have a later character who prefers to only associate with oh, I'm sorry, I was mixing it up. I assume she only associated with nobles. She only associates with she's a bit I don't know, money oriented. So like if my character's like hardworking or maybe has a lot in the way of money, then she'll like her. But because Dolce might not have as much saved up and is just a humble guard slash co-owner of a tavern, I don't think my later character would give her much time of day, unfortunately. But
Oh.
she's just a little mean.
Yeah, I don't. So my boy Ravi that you saw earlier, the purple one, um, he's he kind of has a hard time getting along with a lot of people. Um, I'm just trying to find like a newer OC or something that he wouldn't just like punch and run away from. Uh, that's hard. He's one of my oldest OCs. I love him dearly. He's definitely like kind of an overprotective big brother type to his siblings, and he just generally doesn't trust people very easily because of story reasons. Um, yeah, so I don't think he'd get along with many people because he just hasn't. And a lot of my newer OCs are, I would say, hard to generalize because there's a lot of them.
Of course.
Hard to pick. Ah, I'm sorry, I can't really give you a good answer.
No, that's okay. I
There's a
like that
lot of
answer.
them.
Yeah, yeah, it
Um,
works out. I do have DMs who'll ask me questions like about my OCs that sometimes I actually don't know the answer to. What's like their favorite dish or what's an embarrassing moment from their life just yet? Because for me, a lot of my characters, I like to come up with have their experiences as we play and go along. So it takes me a little bit longer to imagine. Okay, yeah, that would be their horoscope. That would be their sign. This would be their favorite dish that they can make. This would be a fond memory of when they were in school, that kind of thing.
yeah. And part of the thing with that is it's kind of hard to compare like much older characters with like brand new ones because for the older ones they're definitely like way more fleshed out and newer ones
Right.
could like ever be um just because of the years and years and years of time that you've spent with them. Like Ravi, I had him since I was like 13, I think. Um, he's gone through many, many, many redesigns and like, story tweaks and things like that. But like all of that time of just building personality and backstory and like generally what he's like, what he likes to do, that sort of thing. Um, but say I made a character like today, I couldn't necessarily say all that about.
Yeah, so that's sort of the contrast of sort of letting them evolve during the campaign and sort of having them with you personally throughout your in some of your life to literally to both evolve them over time. So yeah, speaking of the OCs, just sort of letting him evolve through the campaign, it's also why it's important to, or really nice rather, to be able to talk to your OCs with people and see, oh, so they do enjoy this kind of juice, or they wouldn't go to a play about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun
Um,
sharing the OCs.
yeah. And part of like pre-writing characters for campaigns is that you might not necessarily know everything about the character. You do all the broad strokes and then let um, the people themselves do the details. That they still feel like they've done a part in making the character, and you like still have that like degree of control over their backstory. Um, do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's less of a like I just give you a character and you have to deal with that. It's slightly more collaborative than that.
Yeah, that's nice. So in terms of that, is there ever a time where you felt like they were too out of character, or do you usually trust that the player knows exactly how to handle them?
There have been times, but I'm generally not gonna be like, oh, that was way out of character. Go back and do it again, because that kind of ruins it a little bit. Because my interpretation of that character might not necessarily be the same as the other person's. And they have the liberty to kind of do what they want with the character. Like, if they kind of cross a boundary or something, am I allow myself to say no. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna be like, oh no, that character wouldn't like soup. Go back.
Yeah, Troy, do you I guess you don't go through, do you relate in that kind of way, or is the campaigns you usually do a little too different than that?
Oh, when it comes to like, say I make a character and then the players kind of maybe take it in a way that I'm not expecting
Hmm.
or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I guess kind of like what you alluded to when we were prepping for this episode. It's not necessarily the characters themselves that my players kind of take in a different direction. It would be sometimes it's the course of the campaign where I have a particular ending in mind, but the players through their actions they come upon an opportunity where, say, for example, um, I don't believe I brought this up last time, but the campaign where we're in the Feywild, where players will actually forget what has transpired to them in the Feywild when they leave, or at least there's a chance for that to happen. And I was expecting some sort of like tragic, oh, now you're back in the real world. You've lost your memories, but that also means all the character growth was lost. Whereas the player saw an opportunity. It was like, hey, can you make me your apprentice to one of the NPCs? And it was much better for her to be under her wing than it was for her to lose all her memories and her character development. And after that scenario, I've been a little bit. I trust my players, especially if they are my players, to sure, I've got an ending in mind, but when we get to that bridge, I'll kind of let them take the reins and I'll see what decisions they have and how that surprises me. Because the meme always is like the DM can prepare, at least in fifth edition, the DM can prepare for the session, but the players take it in a completely different direction that they're not expecting.
Yeah.
So I trust them.
Yeah, I feel like the most important skill that you can have as a DM is just improv.
Right, roll with it.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
Yes,
all
and
of my
exactly.
DM sessions aren't like fully written out things. It's just like a bunch of bullet points of like things that could happen. Maybe I'll have a flow chart if I'm feeling fancy, but I don't like have fully thought out notes. It's just like, okay, bunch of jumping off points. We're gonna roll with the punches, um, sort of thing.
I like that.
Yeah, the flexibility is super important because I have heard of DMs who kind of perhaps they're set in their ways, so the players are incredibly creative and will try to approach a situation in a different way, and the DM will, instead of yes and, will be like yes anyway, or that kind of thing. So it's important to be flexible.
No, you will
That-
ask the bartender about the quest, damn it.
Exactly.
I feel like that's boring both for the players and for the DM.
Right.
Like, where's the excitement if everything turns out exactly the way you thought it would?
Yeah, exactly. Like, even if you don't ask about the bartender about the quest, maybe someone else has heard of rumors that you could ask using a charisma check, or maybe outside you could see an event telling about information about the quest anyways.
Or you could literally just like stumble onto the information out in the woods or something,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what the
Exactly. If
quest
the players
is.
want to be out there, you can make it
Like,
happen.
if they want you to go slay a dragon, maybe you'll be going out on a different quest, and then suddenly the forest around you will erupt in flames, and it's like, oh god, what's happening?
Yeah. You know, that's
Then you'll have a
actually,
more personal reason to go for the dragon.
Right.
you know what? That's actually a pretty good point. I haven't thought about is what if someone ignores, well not purposely, but they just don't go the direction you want, but the consequence sort of happens still because it wasn't dealt
My
with.
thought
That's an interesting
process.
point.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was done.
My thought process is that if it's a big enough problem to be paid attention to, you can't necessarily just walk away from it. Like, the consequences of what's happening, even if they ignore it, that's just another opportunity for you to put more stakes on there. Just let the problem get worse
Yeah.
until they can't ignore
That's funny. Yum, steaks.
Yeah, I do
Steaks.
hear it's the kind of idea where, say you don't address a problem a town is happening, what some DMs will do, or GMs will, if the players come back to that town later, perhaps they see the consequences of what happens because they didn't address the rat plague or the gangs that have been overrunning the town. It's something that I know a lot of DMs do, but as much as I pretend to be a very strict DM, I'm I'm I don't want to say pushover, but I'm pretty flexible. So like if they don't go to that town, I'm not gonna have them come back and see all the carnage that has happened. For the most part, I'll be like, okay, well maybe it will manifest in some other way for the consequences of your actions. It's something I need to kind of remind myself to do. The common saying in TTRPGs being, your consequences of actions.
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah. I'm a little bit different in that, as in, most of my campaigns are one shots and like somewhat confined settings. Um, and it's Lovecraftian horror. If you ignore it, maybe you'll be fine for a bit longer. Sometimes it's better to just ignore things. But either way, eventually you're gonna get a fish person knocking on your door.
Um, was there any characters y'all were thinking about that you were excited to play, but you haven't been able to introduce for some reason or other?
Let me check my notes.
Troy, did you want Moth to go first?
Well, while he's checking his notes, I can take a look. So like, I assume you mean perhaps I have a new character waiting in the wings, but no one's come along to say, hey, like I'm running this campaign, would you want in, or something along those lines, or
Yeah.
okay. Let's see. Let me take a look. Oh, well, I guess it's a little bit different from the answer to your question, but I'll have characters that this is kind of, at least for D&D, a common occurrence where, because with these TTRPGs in general, you're coordinating schedules with at least, two, three, four, five other people, that sometimes you don't get that consistent ability to play every week, every 2 weeks, or even every month. So there are there are characters I have who are technically in active campaigns that have like stagnated, haven't been able to meet for some period of time. Uh, it's one of the memes, the curses that we talk about in the TTRPG community, where it makes me kind of value a group that I have that can meet consistently for a session, like a week every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That way I get to have those characters play. So it's I'm sure I have characters waiting in the wings. I'll have to check my notes too. I'm just like looking through the pictures in my folders for my TTRPG characters, and I'm looking at these and looking at two of them saying, okay, this one's on a hiatus, hasn't met in a few months. This one's also on hiatus, hasn't met in a few months. You know, for whatever reason, like one of my DMs, it was on paternity leave, having like a new kid. Another DM is around, but one of the players or two of the players had a personal life situation come up, so we haven't been able to meet.
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah, my situation again is a little bit different because I don't typically like play as a player. I am mostly the DM. Um, and that means that most of my characters that I've wanted to like put out there have been able to be put out there. Um, Recently I've been like revising some like old campaigns to see if I want to like do them again. Um, Not campaigns, like one shots. And there's this one specific one that I've been expanding upon, and they're not necessarily new characters or like new NPCs. I've just messed with them a little bit, and I want to be able to use them again, but you know, can't really. And with the at least can't really right now, right in this moment. I will eventually. Mark my words. Um, but with meeting, I get how for some people it's kind of frustrating to not be able to meet consistently. But I did have a group which did meet somewhat consistently, which is like once every 2 weeks. Um, and since I mostly did one shots, it was a new one shot every 2 weeks. I had to write and make unique and fun
Oh wow! Oh,
everything.
that's a lot.
I burned out so hard.
Oh.
Don't make my mistakes. If you want to have consistent meetings, just do an actual campaign, not one shots. If you are gonna do one shots, have like a backlog. I remember one time I was like a couple hours before the session and I was like, oh god, I have to finish making characters.
Oh no.
It somehow went fine, but like, yeah, no, don't, I don't recommend that. If you do have a group that can meet consistently, that's fantastic. I personally can't really do that.
I feel that. It's
Need breaks.
yeah. That's why the other benefit of one shots is being able to essentially uh is it one session that you do? That is, as the name
Yeah,
implies, right? Okay.
at least that's what I hope to do. Sometimes they run a little bit longer, and that's like one or two. Um,
Yeah,
but I try not to have them be super long.
Mm-hmm.
I always aim for one, and then it ends up taking a little bit longer than expected. At least on my end when I run my one shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty consistent, having them be like roughly 2 hours, which is cool.
So in terms of this talk, it would not be a one shot because this is part two. So this is a campaign.
Oh no!
I use the phrase like two shot, three shot sometimes. Which is basically what my one shots evolve into. They end up being because I had like for example, I had a one shot for Halloween prepared. I think it was 2 years ago, but like the first session ended up being I think it was like first session was like the role playing, the introductions to each other. The second one was combats. The third one was it just like basically spread out, especially since D&D is I do love the role playing. That's my favorite part of it, but sometimes combat, especially if it's something that I've run for the first time or isn't necessarily balanced correctly, might drag on a little bit, which is why I don't particularly vibe with combat heavy Dungeons and Dragons. I like the
Mhm.
interactions, the little stories that come up. The when people go off to the side and discuss something, or because the interactions are basically, I think, when players can be the most creative, because you can be creative in combat, but it's still got its rules and restrictions and that kind of thing. So it makes for good memories when you leave the floor to your players, and it's a good feeling when you're just sitting there watching them kind of interact with each other, and you're like sitting back thinking, you know what, this is good, this is fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's part of why I lean to more towards Call of Cthulhu because I can avoid a lot of combat in that. Also because the combat is not balanced, but it's not balanced like on purpose. Because, what are you gonna do if you're one guy against like a big eldritch god? Like you don't necessarily have to deal with combat if there's no incentive to do combat because you'll probably die.
Yeah. I'll punch the big Eldritch monster.
I have a gun that'll totally do something. There's technically combat. It's just not advised unless you've built a character specifically to like kick ass. But if you've done like anything else, you're probably gonna die.
Chainsaw Crows, it's just like, I marry the cosmic entity.
I've had people try that actually.
How does it go?
Um, not wonderfully.
I think one of my players is trying to do that to the villain in one of my campaigns. It's like, why defeat her in trial by combat when I can just ask her to the altar, right?
That's good. I feel like that's the other sort of feeling out the vibes kind of thing.
Yes, yes. Thankfully for that situation, everyone, players, DM included, is okay with this development. None of us were expecting this to turn out this way when we started that campaign. Least of all me. Uh, yeah, didn't think this was going to happen, but here we are. Like if there is a wedding near the end of the campaign, I will let you all know how it transpired.
Oh, please do.
Nice. Please.
If I
Typically don't necessarily let players like romance enemies. Also,
Right.
partially because, you know, they're incomprehensible entities that are more of like an it than a person. Um, not that like people can't go by its pronouns. I do sometimes. But, like it's more of like it's not a person, you know? It's a thing. It's
more similar to an
doesn't have
idea.
like emotions in the way that a person like us could understand them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but like so romancing something like that typically wouldn't work out. Um, one time that I had someone try was in a campaign that was pre-written because I was first getting into Call of Cthulhu. Not pre-written by me, just like a pre-written campaign. It was kind of based off of the Shadow over Innsmouth. Um, and have you know that story?
I'm not personally familiar. Are you trying?
Not familiar either.
It's about
Not yet,
like
at
a
least.
cult in a town that is like um they worship a ocean deity, Aegon, um, and they're slowly trying to become fish people via having kids with pre-existing fish people.
Oh.
Um, and but the thing about trying to run away with a fish person is that if you're not also a fish person, you're gonna drown.
That's
Very
fair.
true. It's like if the Little Mermaid ended with the dude going underwater instead, and he's just like, "Oh, I can't breathe."
Yeah, like
hmm Alrighty then. I was gonna ask y'all if y'all had anything you'd like to promote before we, I suppose, call it for now.
um, you can follow me on Instagram at sugarcoatedmoth. Um, all lowercase, one word. Um, yeah.
All right, and as for me, I guess I'll just promote my channel. Uh, I'm at twitch.tv/Captain Troy Handsome. I do TTRPG streams on Wednesdays, and on the other days, I do my own thing. So I do. Oh, I thank you for the shout out. I appreciate you for having us on here again. I just love talking about something that's important to me and that has become such an ingrained part of my life and my hobbies in a way that I wasn't like 4 years ago. I never would have imagined it would turn out like this.
Hmm. I'm glad I could help you both talk about it because I love hearing about it. I could probably hear about it all day, to be honest, but it wouldn't make sense for my hard drive, I believe. Mm. Sorry, I spilled water on myself.
Hate
um,
to be like that.
Before I stopped, I wanted to say I finally found your VOD YouTube. So you do post VODs, Troy, of your campaigns, right?
I do. The early ones are pretty rusty before we get into the groove, before I get like the overlays and everything. But later ones, as practice makes permanent, we get better at it over time. So earlier ones might be a little scuffed, but we're later stuff on point.
So if you're interested in seeing his campaigns, you could definitely catch up to them. I believe you've linked them on Twitch as well.
Right. Yes, the VODs would be. I've got a YouTube link on my Twitch channel, so if you swing over there, you should be able to see those.
Yeah, and I wanted to once again shout out Sugarcoated Mouth. Bonding over a corpse won the jam.
Whoa! Congratulations.
Yeah.
Was there
Thank
anything you'd
you.
like to say about that?
I'm very happy. I'm very proud of myself, and I'm very proud of Trinket. Um, thank you to everyone who supported it. Um, I really appreciate it. It's really cool to be able to just make something and have people like appreciate it. You know, like, I've never had stories that I've helped work on out there in that sort of sense, and seeing like such a positive reception honestly makes me kind of emotional.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
Well, happy for you and all the hard work that you all have been putting in. Like, it's nice to see it paying off.
yeah,
so if you'd love to see them, there's a lot of Captain Troy you can catch up with. There's a lot of Sugar Coated Moth you could catch up with. That's their Instagram. That's their Twitch. You could catch them there. Mayhap we could do something else in the future if y'all are vibing.
Yes, I'm definitely game for us
yeah.
to do something together in the future. Excited to see what we can do.
Yeah, we can see what will
Yeah.
happen. um, I believe that's it for me. If y'all don't have anything else to add.
I'm good.